good evening, and welcome to the February 13th meeting of the Wakefield School Committee. This is a special meeting called due to the cancellation of yesterday's meeting with the snowstorm. Hope everyone survived the snowstorm well and is enjoying what is a warmer weather day. Anyways, calling the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. As we start meetings, if we could join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And as is our tradition, I'd like to open the meeting also with the reading of the mission statement. The vision of the Wakefield Public Schools is to graduate students who are confident, lifelong learners, who are respectful and caring members of their community. Our mission is to prepare students for college, career, and community by providing rich and challenging curriculum, high-quality instruction, and educational experiences that meet their individual needs and interests. Item number 4 on the agenda is a public comment period. This time, welcome any member of the public who'd like to address the committee on any matter, either on tonight's agenda or not, to come to the microphone, identify themselves, and welcome.
Susie Bayer from Aborn Ave. I'm here to read an email that I sent to all of you guys earlier today. Sent it along ahead of time just so that you had it in front of you, especially because I'm kind of representing about 40 people that co-signed the email. This is in response to the what I was here about the last meeting, which is the proposal to unlevel 9th grade ELA. So while initially I personally left the parent forum last week feeling better about the unleveling of ELA 9th grade English, having heard from teachers themselves about how and why they felt this was a good thing for our kids, I received numerous emails and texts and had conversations with people over the last week, mostly focused on their continued concern that they were feeling about the recommendation. I spoke with Wakefield Public School educators who they themselves live in Wakefield, educators who are parents of Wakefield Public Schools but teach kind of outside of the district, and other fellow parents of younger children in the Wakefield Public Schools, all who continue to have questions about why Wakefield is doing this and how it will be implemented. I heard things like, I still don't understand why the change is being recommended. Isn't it a problem that 2/3 of our 9th graders are taking honors English? Shouldn't that be addressed? Why hasn't Wakefield Public Schools differentiated more between the honors and CP versions of 9th grade ELA? And then concerns about how this change would be implemented, monitored, and measured. Questions like, will kids get the additional support they need in a class that's being weighted as an honors course? Will high flyer students get more challenging content that would typically be offered in an honors course? How will teachers be supported so that they can teach the varying abilities of these students? I heard that one a lot. And how will success be measured and monitored? The list goes on, but I hope that helps get the idea. One parent shared a thought that really resonated with me personally, and I think it's worth sharing here because I think it embodies a theme that I was hearing from those parents who reached out to me personally. The general feeling was that middle school is and should be focused on transitioning our kids from elementary educational concepts to more complex problem solving, collaborative work, and strong writing and communication skills, things that will be needed to be successful in college and in life. It's where they should focus on citizenship, kindness, community, while also fostering a love of learning. Middle school is where we should focus on social and emotional well-being in the context of academics. But high school is and should be about all of those things, plus getting students ready for college and the working world, with rigorous courseware and content and high expectations for the students who need and want it. Removing tracking for 9th grade ELA doesn't seem to serve students who need additional instruction to get their needs met, nor allow for students who will benefit from learning with peers who are academically similar. School committee members, as elected officials, we, the below-listed parents, urge you to consider not approving the program of studies tonight if it includes a recommendation to unlevel 9th grade ELA. While we understand that the motion to approve may be somewhat of a formality, and that the purview of the curriculum is generally felt not to be a responsibility of the school committee, There were about 50 people who showed up for the forum last week and spent 2 hours, more than 2 hours, listening and sharing their thoughts on this topic. Some in support, but many with concerns. There are also 40 people who have added their names to this document whom believe that the unleveling of 9th grade ELA is the wrong move for Wakefield Public Schools and don't believe the committee should be supporting the administration's recommendation to make this change. Thank you. I unfortunately cannot stay for the discussion, but I will be watching it online.
Thank you, Susie. Any other members of the community wish to address the school committee at this time? No? Okay. All right, very good, thank you. Moving on, Student Advisory Council. Come on up. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good, how are you all?
Great.
I'm going to start off with the sports this time. So we're going to start. The boys hockey just made their tournament this year, so it's very exciting for them. Boys basketball also won the Middlesex League title, so that's very exciting for everybody too. Gymnastics just had their league meet and they got second, which they've come so far since the program has changed. And then now they have sectionals too, which is crazy to think about of how far they've come. Girls and boys track and field have states on Sunday at Reggie Lewis Center, so that should be very interesting to see because we have some really great talent on that team. The wrestling team has also done very well, and they have their state tournament this Friday and Saturday, and we're hosting it at the high school in the field house, so we should try to get some big turnout there. And then moving on to academics and clubs, the Social Awareness Club is having a fundraiser this week, in the past few weeks, and they're called UTA Bands. And this is supporting a child's education, and we're selling those until Friday. So all the money that are being donated, so everybody buys like a bracelet, and that money is going towards this child that is going to college. So that's interesting. And then this week is also hosted by the MVP Club, and it's called Violence Awareness Week, and that's for dating and relationship violence awareness. And many participated yesterday especially, and they all wore orange to stand up for this, which is great. Next coming up, SATs are coming up soon for juniors, so everybody, it's about a month away, so everybody's trying to prepare for those as best as they can. Seniors are receiving their college letters and are making their final decisions, so they're all trying to get those last minute grades in and deciding where they want to go. Are they edgy? And next week is February break, as you probably all know, so it's an exciting time for everybody right now within sports and academics and clubs, so everybody seems to be enjoying this fun-filled week, especially with the snow day too, or the early dismissal. So yeah, everything's going great.
Wonderful. Any questions? Yes, Chris.
You may not know the answer
Sure.
if you don't. I did have the pleasure of attending the a cappella competition
yes.
Saturday night,
Yes.
but I couldn't stay to the end, and I don't know if our two teams made it beyond to the next step or not. I didn't know.
Honestly, I'm not sure, but I can totally find out because I heard that they did very well.
Oh, they did a
So,
fabulous job. It was
yes,
a
of
fun
course.
night to watch. It was just there was some excellent groups there, and
Yes.
there's been of all of the groups that came, only 3 could advance.
Which is, very
so-
hard. So I would love to, next meeting, I would definitely bring that back to
Okay,
let you all know.
great, thank you.
So yeah, perfect.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank
Thank you very much. Awesome. Have a great February vacation.
She's going to stay for our discussion.
Yes, you're absolutely welcome to stay, of course. Consent agenda. We have a motion, Mr. Callahan.
Oh, somewhere we must, huh? Move the school committee approve the minutes of the January 23rd, 2019 school committee minutes as presented.
Is there a second? Second? Is there a discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously.
And one abstention, since I wasn't.
Okay, it doesn't pass unanimously. I correct myself. Thank you. So, one abstention, Judy. Mr. Liakos, is that correct? Yes. Okay. All right, next, item number 7, budget items. The business administrator is not able to be with us tonight because of the change of date. So there are business reports that are in the packet, which we've had some time to review. If you have any questions, I bet either the superintendent could field them, or we could request answers from Michael, via email in the next couple of days. Any questions with regard to the business reports or anything that superintendent would like to say?
No, I think I know, Michael kind of had some questions, and I think addressed some of those questions.
Yeah, I'd sent him a question because I was concerned about the personnel lines running in the red. He basically explained that, yes, those are running in the red, but he felt as though that the some other lines were going to make up for that because if we didn't hire personnel, we would have had to send kids outside placements, and
Right.
there was still even though it looks red on one side, it's not on the other. So.
Right, there's a net savings even though there's an
Yeah.
expenditure.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions regarding the budget reports? Seeing none, payroll warrants. We have a motion. Mr. Callahan.
Move the school committee approve payroll warrants 29 and 31 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Gifts, Mr. Callahan.
Move the school committee accept with gratitude the donation of $1,000 from the Wakefield Cooperative Bank for the Parent University Program.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Passes unanimously. Mr. Callahan.
And move the school committee accept with gratitude the donation of $25,000 from the Cummings Foundation via the Wakefield Educational Foundation to be used for playground equipment for the Doyle Early Childhood Center and the Dahlbear Elementary School. This is the third year of the $100,000 Cummings grant awarded in June of 16.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Just
Yes,
quick
Mr.
question.
Ackles.
So that the $25,000 installments over 4 years, does that mean the work on the playground is segmented accordingly, or how is that? Or is this sort of reimbursing the work that it's already been done?
So both.
Both,
And so,
okay.
So what we've done, so this hasn't only been about playgrounds. The work, the most current investment is about making the playgrounds more accessible.
Right.
For students with physical disabilities,
Right.
which they weren't prior to.
Right.
And so we've invested the money into that area. But we've also, they were just here, the Cummings team, was here for a site visit. And what they did is they visited with Brendan Kent and Lisa Silva, and they took a look at our adventure course, which is what the first monies were used to kind of help build here at the high school.
Yeah.
And
okay,
so,
yeah.
so that money's really been stretched,
Yeah.
and we've used it for a number of different things.
Yeah.
So their visit was really a great exchange. We presented a video. Maybe I could share that at another time.
Yeah.
But it was very, very well done. Might be good to maybe have maybe Brendan and Lisa come and talk about what they're doing, along with
yeah.
Elizabeth Russell,
Yeah.
who was kind of the architect
Right.
in helping us get this grant.
Yeah, it's a
So,
great grant.
it's just it's
worth
just really
highlighting,
great.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
Good. Great question, and good to hear the progress is continuing. Any other questions or comments with regard to the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. Moving on, the chair's comments and action items. Move right into item B with regard to the girls softball in the Blatz Field. So we have our representatives tonight who would like to join us. Come up to the, yeah, please. You did indeed. Now, you guys were so articulate last time. You remember that we were incredibly impressed with not only your academic prowess, but your ability to communicate really what your thoughts were. It was really quite impressive. We're really pleased that you're back. So what I'd like to do is ask the superintendent, who's going to have a couple action items with regard to following up with Mr. Kent and with Mr. Evangelista, and see where we may be at this time.
Sure, and so we've had the opportunity to meet with the town administrator and Mr. Fazio to talk about just preparing Blatz for the spring, but we've also been able to talk about kind of the bigger picture and moving into spring, but also trying to create a warrant article at town meeting to kind of support a new field. And so, and I think, and I spoke with Taylor the other day, and I know that we're gonna meet as part of this follow-up just on Friday morning, just to have a conversation. And then when the weather breaks, we don't have snow on the field, we can obviously walk the field, and we can invite others to come as well. It'd be nice to invite Mr. Kent and maybe Mr. Fazio as well, if he can fit it into his schedule. Your perspective and the information that you provided, especially in our last meeting, along with the information that was provided by Mr. Burnett and Mr. Story, I think has really been kind of a motivator for all of us to think about what we have and maybe what we need, to think about access and kind of accessibility, and what the program needs. And so I think that you guys have done a really amazing job talking about that. And so I'm looking forward to our meeting on Friday morning, and I'm really pleased at your advocacy. And I don't know if you have thoughts that you'd like to share?
I mean, I think talking on Friday is a good start.
Yeah.
And I think we'll have more to talk about once we can walk the field and kind of show you what we're talking about, because I know it's kind of hard to like know what we see when you're not in our shoes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, one of the very positive things that have come of this is this notion that, I think that our administrator, Mr. Mayo, bringing this to town council and their interest in trying to support this process as well, along with school committee, I think is really gonna help us really think how best to support and help us get what we really need. And so, as the superintendent, I can't thank you guys enough, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. And probably most importantly, really proud of you guys. You guys have really done a nice job, so.
Thank you for listening to us and hearing what we have to say.
So there's this expression in life and in politics, sort of a Tip O'Neill type expression that goes something like, a town is run by those who show up. And what that means is, obviously we want people to be engaged. We want people, there to be openness and engagement and allowing for people to come in and feel like they're part of a conversation that they can truly impact and make change. And I think the work that Mr. Burdett and Mr. Story and others have done, the parents and coaches and all that have helped rally, as well as obviously the girls in the team, have really made quite an impression. And that's an incredible compliment to what the work you've been able to do and the passion to which you've brought behind it, as well as obviously the work that was done by some volunteer moms and dads and the professional work done by architects and others. And following up on what Mr. Lyons said, and I'm fairly confident I speak for my colleagues in this regard, is that we would like to make note of our interest in working with the town administration in sponsoring an article at town meeting, which would be done probably jointly by the school committee and the town council. So we can relieve you of that political burden, if you will. That's not to say that we still have to win the vote, but certainly the type of the apparatus and the mechanics that you've been able to be incredibly persuasive, as well as draw a need. And that you should be complimented for that, and you should be proud of yourselves. Your moms and dads should be really proud of you girls. So that's something that I'd like to announce, and I'd like to develop a consensus around the table about our capacity and willingness this evening to be able to make that as a commitment, that we will work for this spring to sponsor a town meeting warrant article for the renovation of Plattsfield. Is that something we can all agree to?
Yeah.
Great. You girls did a great job, and Mr. Burnett, thank you so much, and Mr. Story, tell your entire team that's something that we will work out the details in the coming days and weeks, continue to meet with the superintendent and those type of things. Mr. Lyons will keep us in the loop on how that progresses, and we'll make sure that the rest of the balls come into play. No pun intended.
Just remember that every registered voter has a vote at town meeting.
That's right. Anyone
And-
over 18.
So,
Is anyone over 18 with 18? Alumni, right?
Yeah.
you know, when it comes up at town meeting for that warrant for the funding for this, you know, people have to be there to vote for your project, so
Yeah.
that's something you should be focusing on now.
We got some people.
So we're going to transition this as a lesson in advocacy, public advocacy, to now a lesson in electioneering and winning the day. But anyways, we wanted to be able to share that news.
Thank you.
In a very enthusiastic way. So you guys should be pretty proud of yourselves.
Thank you.
Rally our
We haven't
troops
won
and
yet,
get them.
but
Yes.
we're making huge leaps.
Yes.
Thank
And
you.
we're probably gonna be in much better shape with their parents getting them home at a decent hour.
Last time was a little late during midterms
sure.
week.
That's right.
Hope your midterms still went well.
Yes.
I did.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, and good luck with this season.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, thank you,
Thanks,
ladies.
Bill.
Thank
Great
you.
job. Okay, next, MSBA requests. We have a request for our Wakefield, excuse me, participation in the accelerated repair program. The request being brought before us this evening, which has been in your packet since Judy sent it out, I believe, Friday or Saturday. This is a weekend packet, wasn't it?
And I updated it, I think, Monday?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the MSBA was in the original packet that went out. Anyways, this is to, and the superintendent will fill in the blanks with any questions we may have, but it's not new information really with regard to the needs of the Greenwood School. When we had our tour and conversations around the needs of the Walton School back in the fall, we were made aware of some additional things that really didn't get handled or didn't get completed, and this opportunity came about. I want to thank the superintendent and the town administrator for moving on this and bringing us to this place where we are tonight, being able to put these SOIs in place. I do know that obviously with all SOIs, it needs to be approved by both the school committee and town council. Town council, because of the nature of this week, obviously they meet before us on Monday, so they've already been through this process. So we certainly want to be able to add our support to the work of the superintendent and the town administrator and the DPW director to getting us where we are tonight. Any questions for the superintendent? Yes, Colleen?
So a question on when we hear back from the MSBA, and also, depending on when we hear back, if we submit the SOI, do we also submit a capital planning or a capital request to town meeting? Do they go together, or is this partial funding, full funding, or are
So-
we able to hear back from them before we have to make that?
So I think we would wait until we hear back, until that decision is made. But I'm sure when we go to town meeting that there will be some funds put aside to either repair or to try to remedy to the extent possible with the budget that they have. So I'm sure, quite sure, that Mr. Mayo and Mr. Stinson have kind of a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C,
Okay.
right? And so ideally, plan A would be that we have some resources coming from MSBA for the repair of at least one of the roofs. So we also need to prioritize which roof is like a first and which is a second, right? And so, which isn't easy to do, but based on our capital request, where we asked for them to support or remedy the issues that are happening at Greenwood, they're moving forward with that, and as part of that, we're seeking support from the state to kind of just help with the resources or the overall cost of that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yes, Craig?
So, Doug, you partially answered my question, which was whether MSBA will ask us to prioritize one or the two. And we've talked a lot, obviously, about the Greenwood, less so about the Walton in this case. So how does that, could you just elaborate a little bit more about how that process works, and if there's any more role for the school committee in that, or is that really just conversation between you and your team and the
In terms of which,
MSBA?
in terms of
Yeah.
which project is prioritized?
Exactly, yeah.
So, it's a difficult situation because each school warrants repairs
Yeah.
and remedies, right? And so.
And the nature of the problems are very similar.
The
right?
nature of the problems are
Yeah,
very similar,
yeah.
with, I think, the exception that At the Greenwood, it looks like there's, some water that has gotten beneath
Yeah.
the rubber roofing.
Yeah.
And, it feels a little squishy. And so, just based on the leaks that we've had, based on the water underneath the insulation, and based on kind of the larger roof, which will mean a larger cost.
Yes.
We think we're prioritizing Greenwood over Walton. That's not to say that we're not gonna have to do work on Walton. We are. And for all the good work that we've done, we do need to kind of figure out the old section of rubber roofing to try to address that. But I'm sure that we will be able to address that in time. And, MSBA could come back and say, we can't support project one, but we could support project two. So there is this kind of piece where it's like you ask,
Yeah.
and you kind of follow the rules that they provide or the guidelines that they provide, and they kind of respond accordingly.
Yeah.
So we'll wait patiently to hear from them.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Chris?
Just to clarify something I think I heard you say, the Walton, it's not like the work wasn't done or completed or anything. To the best of my understanding, is that, during the process of this renovation, the roof going into it seemed fine. There were no leaks.
That was
But-
not part of the original project.
Wasn't part of the original product because it did not have leaks. But like anything, when you start doing work and there were penetrations for this and penetrations for that, that they all of a sudden, plus people are up there walking around that there was never, no reason for anybody to be up there in the past. Things got disturbed. And then, because of the age of the roof, it wasn't able to really withstand it. And so that's why some of these leaks started popping up. It was old and fragile, and as long as you didn't touch it, you were okay. But then once you started to touch it, it started to go downhill
It was disturbed during the construction.
during the construction, but it wasn't a known factor going into the construction. That was the one thing we didn't think we had to worry about.
And now we do.
And one of the things that I think is important to note is there's a new roof on the newly constructed areas.
Right.
Right? So we're talking about the old roof that is over 25 years old or 22 years old. And so, so that's really the issue, right? And I think you're spot on. It is this notion of getting up there, disturbing what was there, and also kind of making, penetrations for HVAC and for electrical and things like that, but that are really not starting to show itself.
Right. It just
Yeah.
brought out the age.
Yep.
So just for clarity for both the minutes, as well as any member of the community that may be asking, because it hasn't been discussed what the price tag for these two things are. It will not be part of the formal motion, but the Greenwood request, the Greenwood roof request is for $725,000. The Walton request is for $875,000. Just for the minutes, if anyone was interested in what those price tags might be. Okay. Any other questions for the superintendent on this matter? We have a motion, Mr. Callahan. We have two motions.
Two motions,
Yes.
actually. I move the school committee approve the submittal of the statement of interest for repairs to the Greenwood Elementary School as presented.
For a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously.
And I move the school committee approve the submittal of a statement of interest for the repairs of the Walton Elementary School as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Passes unanimously. Very good, thank you. Next on the agenda is one of the follow-up items. Just in case anyone thought I forgot, I didn't forget. We've just had an busy January. But one of the follow-up items from our December retreat was to sort of bring together a formalization of the protocols that we had in draft form, and then had some conversation around. To the best of my notes, I edited the protocols that we had that we talked about that Saturday, and they're in this evening's packet. If my notes were not are tight enough, please let's make some amendments. I'm happy to I have no pride in authorship there. These need to be ours. We need to be comfortable with them and make them work for our work and that of the community. So any commentary around the operating protocols that are in the packet? Okay, that worked for everyone's memory?
Yeah.
We're good? Okay, we have a motion, Mr. Callahan.
Okay, move the school committee approve the school committee operating protocols as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. So ends the chair's comments and action items for tonight. The superintendent, Mr. Lyons.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity I'd like to invite Amy McLeod and Kara Morrow up to the table to just talk a little bit more about our parent forum that we were able to have at the high school last week that focused on kind of the unleveling of ninth grade English. And so, one of the things that before they even get started, I think is really critical to note is, and Susie brought this up as well in her comments, is, there are a number of parents that have questions about this change. What became very clear to us, and I think is an opportunity for us, is in our meeting that we had at the parent forum, we had about 75 students, and almost 50 of those students did not have children entering ninth grade, right? Right?
Parents, yeah.
Parents. And so, which really is kind of raised the question for us is, what kind of within this change is affecting them? What are their concerns? What are their challenges? And so what they were able to highlight is that, if you think about that, 75 parents, 2/3 of which don't have parents entering 8th grade, so this change does not affect their families or their children directly. And so in listening to them and kind of hearing from them, what they were able to share is that their children, many of whom are still in elementary school, they feel their children, and some as young as first grade, could be more challenged and more supported intentionally to be challenged. So for us, this has really prompted a greater conversation about how we are engaging and supporting advanced learners at elementary and at middle school. So if the cup is half full, this has kind of created a broader conversation about how we're supporting, challenging, and engaging our students at kind of both ends of the spectrum at elementary and middle school, as well as high school. And so I just want to kind of create or share that as a context, right? Because, and if I felt like we were able to do a give and take with Susie in regard to, she shared that 40 people had signed. I think a portion of those people that had signed also do not have children entering the high school, but also have concern or questions about how can my son or daughter be more challenged? And they may be an advanced learner, and what does that look like? And so I feel like that's really a very positive thing for us. And I think a lot of the information that has been brought up and shared by parents, we've been able to bring directly back to the elementary principals and to the middle school principal. And we're going to kind of work on this in kind of the weeks and months ahead. And I hope that we can kind of revisit this, because I think it's an important part of this narrative that has been created. So, Chris?
Just an added part to that, though, is that from some of the pushback that I'm hearing, is that these parents of 5th and 6th graders are concerned, and they're concerned now, and they're voicing the concern now because they feel as though if we go ahead with this, they're going to be looking at private schools, and they're going to stop planning for that now. They'll pull their kids out of the Wakefield Public Schools, go to private school.
Yeah. And so, I can share with you that it's our job to engage students at the highest level possible. It's our job to create positive outcomes for kids and to work with both them and their families to create that, and this change at the 9th grade level I believe does that. You know, I don't want to talk too much and take time away from Kara and Amy. But this notion of, you know, parents who, they have not addressed those concerns with me, that they feel like their children aren't challenged or they might have to go to private school to be challenged. You know, every exchange that we have with parents kind of rests heavily with us. We're not dismissing any concern that's put on the table. So, you know, I would encourage you and urge any parents that have questions like that at the elementary level, to please get in touch with us and let's start that conversation.
That's exactly what I've done.
Yeah, no, I think that's, and again, this conversation is about ninth grade English, but it's really not just about ninth grade English. This has kind of raised a lot of things for other families, which, again, we're not shying away from this. If the cup is half full, these are conversations that I can share with you that feel overdue, right? These things just didn't kind of pop up in the last few months. There have been things that parents have been kind of wrestling with, and they're important. And I think that we need to be able to hear them, hear their concerns, and respond. And so I'm looking forward to engaging parents at those levels, and I'm also looking forward to engaging our elementary administrators and our middle school administrators about this information, right? And so, again, I know I invited you to the table 3 minutes ago or 5 minutes ago. I've been talking straight away. I'm sorry for that. And so I'd like to turn it over to Amy and Kara and they can kind of fill in a little bit more.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here tonight. We thought, you know, it was a great opportunity for us to come to the table and just summarize the information. This has been a widely discussed topic for the past month and a half. So our goal tonight is to really highlight some key components, to break down the information and just make it as clear as possible for you to consider before moving forward. So I'm going to pass it on to Amy for the first slide.
Yeah, we're going to kind of speak off the slides, but not really. Just we wanted to show you how we're walking you through a few steps of this. I wanted to clarify what is being recommended again. And I think that sometimes we get lost. Colleen brought up a question today. Sometimes we get lost in the semantics, and I'm glad that you brought up that question. So what we're recommending is one grade 9 English course for all entering 9th grade students. It would be a heterogeneous grouped class, which would mean that kids would not be separated or tracked. Some people call it detracking. Some people are calling it unleveling. I think you could use both words interchangeably. And all students in this heterogeneous class would get honors level for this class. And so I don't think that, so I think that the word we use doesn't really matter, but I want to be clear that those words kind of mean the same thing so that we're just all on the same page. I think that the idea of offering it at the honors level is exactly what we mean by when we say that we think that all students can achieve at high levels when given the proper supports, when given the proper scaffolds, and when given the interventions that they need. And we'll talk about that more as the night goes on. Kara will speak to the special education piece in a little bit. We are focusing on the high school ELA standards, and I know that we've been talking about what this means about foundational. I know there's been a question there about foundational skills. Shouldn't students come to high school with foundational skills? The skill sets that students start with in high school is like a whole different set of skills. The way the Common Core is broken down, the way the frameworks are broken down, you really talk about sort of resetting in 9th grade and building on those. You can think about that in mathematics around Algebra 1. You can think about that in ELA in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. I also think that what we're really talking about is, going back to what Doug says, is that idea of supporting, challenging, and engaging opportunities for all students. And so by having a heterogeneous grouping, I think what we're saying is that we want all students to have that opportunity in 9th grade to experience that. We're going to talk a little bit more tonight as we go through this about this idea that what that means that these classes will be more heterogeneous. Balanced by gender. We broke down the gender breakdown for parents the other night, and I think it's telling to notice that currently more honors level students are girls and more college level students are boys, significantly so. We're talking about balancing classes in terms of if we want to do it this way, low, medium, and high learners. I don't even know what that means sometimes because we could break down skill sets and where kids are high and low, and we'll talk about that a little bit tonight. And certainly, we are committed to how we support special education students, how we support ELL students, and how we support a wide range of learners in this. I think what we want to say foundationally, right, and we keep saying foundationally, it's this opportunity to not put kids in buckets as they're coming through the door. It's an opportunity to say to students, we believe in you, we're going to promote high levels of engagement for all of you, we're going to support you so that you are able to reach those high levels of engagement, and we want it actually, someone said this earlier, to match the rest, Susie said this earlier, match their life and school experiences, when they will be in experiences in life, in this room, in the workplace, in college with a wide range of learners, and need to sort of how to navigate that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more tonight. I think it's important to get to the why. We've been talking a little bit about that, so Kara's going to start with the why, and we'll go a little deeper there.
Okay. So before I get into or we both get into the why specifically related to this change, I want to highlight just the positive nature of the conversations that have been happening. I think this is a transition year for Wakefield Public Schools. Doug's new in his first year. I'm new to the district. Amy's new. We have other new members of our instructional leadership team. So I feel like the group is coming together in a really positive way where people new to the district are bringing different perspective, different idea. We're tapping into people who have been in the district to learn historical perspective and to ask those questions. So I just want to highlight the fact that I think really rich conversation is happening across the district, and it's causing all of us to think about where do we need to go next as a district. And I think our leadership style is similar in that we feel it's so important to engage and empower our teachers who are at the ground level, who are working with our students every day, who can feed us the information that we need to make those decisions about where we want to move the district as we move forward. Identifying those areas of growth is huge. And I think, one of the points I want to mention as an area of growth that we talked about earlier this fall when Matt and I presented about MCAS was our overall growth scores for students that, as related to our MCAS data. We've had an eye on this, and it's causing us to ask a lot of questions about why. Why are we on the lower end, our overall growth scores on the lower end of what is considered typical growth? That is just a question that, when we think about all of the great structures that we have in place, the resources that we have, that for us is just a huge question, something we want to look further into. When we talk about achievement scores, we're looking at students' proficiency towards the standard, but as we look at their growth scores, we're looking at their improvement of achievement over time. And this can be used as evidence to show improvement for our students with low achievement and also to raise the bar for our students with high achievement to push them beyond just a level of proficiency, to keep them going, keep them moving forward. I think a piece, Amy mentioned that along this trend of growth percentiles is that our subgroups are performing particularly low when it comes to growth. And when I say subgroups, I'm talking about our economically disadvantaged groups, our high needs groups, our students with disabilities. They're all performing below typical expected growth, and that's concerning for us across the district. ELL is not an official subgroup for us, but is another group to consider as we're making decisions about change and expectations and access. So the conversation has been a lot about student grouping. I think where we want to move the conversation in talking to teachers is more so in terms of instructional practices and classroom structures. How are we giving our teachers everything they need with regards to classroom makeup so that they can be successful as possible? And I've heard conversation about, do we need to teach our teachers how to differentiate? We don't. Differentiation is nothing new. It's not a new concept. I think all of our teachers have been trained appropriately for many years now. Not to say that more professional development won't be helpful, but I think when you look at class makeup, it can be almost impossible to differentiate effectively if the classroom structure isn't what we think it should be. At the parent forum, one of the, I think it was the English department coordinator had talked about just the myth related to honors classes as well, and that it tends to be thought that it's all about content, reading more books, focusing more on a quantity versus quality. And our conversations across the district are really focusing on mastery of standards. What do we want our students to learn? why do we want them to learn this? How do we want them to learn it? And I just love those conversations that are happening, and I think it's only going to serve all of our students that much better. The other conversations we hear a lot about are the grouping of our students with IEPs. I think these are conversations I've engaged in across the district, just in terms of classroom makeup. Students with IEPs are eligible for IEPs for a variety of different reasons. It doesn't mean that they should all necessarily be grouped instructionally together. And that's something we're talking about as we decide classroom makeup, and Amy referenced balance, gender, learning style, subgroups, et cetera. We need to be thinking about all of that because it's a conversation around instructional groupings, and just because a student's on an IEP doesn't mean that they have to be matched with other students on IEP. Their instructional match might be better served with someone who's not on an IEP. So there's a lot of questions around this happening, and especially with regards to balance and class size. One of the key points I heard related to this recommendation is that it may in fact reduce class size overall for our students. And a key component to differentiating is knowing your students. And I think if class sizes are reduced, our teachers are better able to form relationships, to understand the learning profiles of their students, to understand what drives those students, to understand how those students can best express themselves and demonstrate their understanding of a concept. So all of that will just further support the skills that our teachers already have. I'm going a long time on this slide, sorry. I was going to go into special education next.
That's right, talk about special education.
The next component I will touch upon is special education. I know that was a concern expressed by a lot of parents in terms of what this class might look like for our students in special education. For me, based on my experience in my work within special education, I think this is a huge win for our special education population. I think, as Amy said, it's easy to put students in buckets, and it will allow more opportunity and access for our students with learning challenges to be engaging with peers who are more at their instructional levels, to be sharing their diverse experiences with peers, and to be exposed to rich content with the bar held high for them. I think co-teaching has been another topic, and I think it's important for us to clarify that there's not a recommendation to eliminate a co-taught model. Co-teaching is a service. Special education is not a class, and that's something that I think is a key component and a key takeaway. Special education is broad. The types of students involved within special education vary, and the reasons why a student might be eligible for an IEP don't always come down to academic skill set. We have students on IEPs for social emotional needs, depression, anxiety, health-related medical needs, none of which impact their cognitive abilities or overall academic capabilities. On the opposite side, we have students diagnosed with learning disabilities who have certain areas of strength that far surpass their peers without IEPs. So we don't want to be denying these students access to be able to show all of the strengths that they possess. As I mentioned, with the current structure, if it continues on how it has been, we are tending to overload classes with students with really specific individualized learning disabilities or learning challenges, and that can, in a lot of ways, be more restrictive to those students. So I'll just end on that piece. I just think it's such an important point to walk away with, that we're not proposing to eliminate the co-taught model. In fact, I think it will probably be improved, because we're really going to be focusing on what students need versus this is where we have the support staff, this is where this student has to go. We're really looking at what the students need, what they require in terms of content modifications, format modifications, accommodations, and we're staffing our special education staff where the needs of the students lie. And that could be in a variety of different placements.
I think that just before we go on to a few more whys, one thing I heard Susie ask earlier is, will students get additional supports? The answer is yes. Additional supports will be provided in the course, in this course. How will teachers be supported, right, to be able to meet the needs of all students? And I have to tell you, going back to what Kara was saying, is about the exciting parts of this for us. The conversations that I've seen happening already in the building. The other night, some of our teachers were there. Marcy Bercuzzi, our Director of Special Education, one of our English special education teachers was there. And the conversation that small group is having pre and post forum around So how can we provide services in a different way, in a different structure that supports kids more? Because I'll be able to spread my services around to different classes. The co-taught model will still exist, but it could look slightly different. It's just been exciting, right? Few more pieces on the why. I want to just go back to the issue of equity. I think first and foremost, the answer to why we are doing this is because we have a responsibility to equity. We have a responsibility to provide challenges, to provide supports, services, scaffolding, resources for all students, right? Because the idea is that we really think it's important for that students have that opportunity to come in and know that they can achieve high level of understanding and outcomes. We think that's incredibly important. I think another why is, the English department has been looking, English department in particular. It started there, the conversation has started there in the English department looking at the demographics, asking really tough questions about what happens when we separate students, compartmentalize them. Does that sort of diminish a student's understanding of their opportunity to grow and to flourish? Is that really the best way to help them make gains and to stretch themselves? And that's a question that we're asking. Is it a different way of looking so that we're not placing students based on social, emotional, behavioral readiness from 8th grade? And I want to think about that for a minute as a parent, knowing what my child who just transitioned to high school, what she looked like last December versus what she looked like in September when she went into school. A very different learner, a much more confident young person, ready for high school. I'm not sure that she was in December when her placements are made from her 8th grade teachers. Not that the 8th grade teachers are not doing the best that they can, I'm not saying that, but kids change and mature so much in that time frame. I think we see a very changed student when they arrive at the high school. So again, it speaks to that why grade 9 is a perfect time for this, right? This idea of having a fresh start in high school, telling students that we're not limiting them, that they can achieve in our building, and that goes to our growth mindset piece. The teachers who were there at the forum last week really believe in this model. And they believe that by showing students how much they believe in their ability to excel and promising and supporting them around these supports and the pieces that they will need, I think we're going to see different outcomes. A teacher made a note, and I think it's really important to bring here. We see very few students coming in 9th grade and excelling in all areas of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Are there a few outliers and shining stars? Absolutely. But for most students, you could have a student who's reading at a very high level, but really needs some support around how to express their ideas in a conversation and how to interact with their peers when they're having small group work. You might have an incredible student who is able to excel in writing in terms of expressing their ideas, but they don't know how to navigate a text very well. They can't use textual evidence. They don't know how to dig deep into textual writing. And so I think that this idea of looking at a student who's ready for all of those skills at a high level in the 9th grade, I think is a little bit of a myth. And I think, again, stepping up to those foundational skills in 9th grade, teachers are ready to say, we need to grow all of our students who are coming in, regardless of their level, to make sure that they're making gains in growth in these skills. I think 9th grade, there's another reason why we're talking about 9th grade, again with the why. We're asking not only what are the skills and strategies that students will need to be successful in the next 3 years of their trajectory in English, but what are the skills and strategies kids will need to be successful because these skills and strategies cross over to other content areas. So, again, I think I said this a couple weeks ago when I was here, I'm an English teacher by trade, so I think, English is an important subject in terms of its connection to other content areas. But it is our language, it is our communication, it is how we interact in all content areas. And one of the pieces that I know we've been working on in schools over the last 10, 15, 20 years is reading and writing across content areas. And so I think that by really making this shift in 9th grade English, we're going to see an effect and an impact that's going to help kids' skills in other content areas. That's our hope. Finally, I think the last why, when we're talking about balanced classes, when we're looking at size and the demographic makeup of this, I talked about this a few weeks ago, and I really believe this, is we really are trying to appreciate the world that the kids are going into. We want to give them this idea that it is important to engage with students from other perspectives, other backgrounds, other cultures, other learning styles. Colleen, I think a couple weeks ago you made the parallel of your dinner table. That was masterful, and I think that's exactly what we're talking about, is how enriched these conversations and the discourse could be in these classrooms by opening up students' eyes to just sort of AJ was talking about that common experience, right? And I think that's the most important why. Why ninth grade? Why English? That's the reason. And so those are the pieces. There certainly are pieces of research that we could talk about. I know we've been talking a lot about John Hattie, who's done a lot of research, but some of the pieces that he talks about, just because students are placed in groups, he talks about, doesn't mean that there's necessarily significant learning in those groups, right? And the significant learning comes from the instructional piece that Kara was talking about. And we have the teachers on board who are willing to work on their instructional pieces, and I think that's the key. I also think that we're resting deeply on the work of Carol Ann Tomlinson, who talks about ability grouping high and low. We've been talking about ability grouping for years in this country, and then we track and then we detrack, we track and then we detrack. And I've been reading some stuff that she's been talking about, and she's really talking about we have a duty to create heterogeneous classrooms where we teach up, right? Where we tell all kids that they can succeed by giving them rich and deep curriculum. And her argument is that we have the skills to do that. The Common Core supports us in that in English. This idea of we know how to differentiate, and if not, we can train teachers and work around that. But she talks about we can succeed with all students in what we often thought of as just advanced curriculum. Kids can do it if we give them that opportunity and those supports. She argues that the only question that remains is whether we have the moral will to invest in that decision. And I can tell you without a doubt that the teachers at the high school and the administration at the high school definitely has that moral will to take this on. So that's our why, I think. Kara's going to talk a little bit about the communication piece.
Yep. Okay, I was gonna pop back to you. Do you want me to go through the
We kind of
timeline?
chunked this that we're both
We
talking
did,
about at
I
the same
know.
time, right?
So the next slide, we just wanted to focus on the communication piece and how this was rolled out, the conversation that happened across the community with the parent group, teachers. So I can just go through the first two bullets. You want to go through?
Yeah,
them?
I mean, I
Yep.
think we just wanted to talk about learning, right? So I think we took away from some learning from this from the communication and the work around this. One of the learnings is we're talking about ninth grade information for 8th grade parents needs to come earlier in the year. The school that I came from, we did it in November. So talking to parents in January to me is late. So next year we're looking at a more aggressive timeline, if you will, so that we can get information out to parents sooner. Chris, you spoke to that idea of the private school piece, the parochial school piece. I think Wakefield High School is completely competitive in that game, and I think that we need to get our information out to parents sooner to let them know the advantages of a public education in Wakefield, and so that's a learning for us. I also think another learning for us at the high school is sort of creating that dialogue that Doug talked about in terms of making sure parents have the opportunity to ask questions. The way that we structured the forum for the 8th grade parent night we thought worked best. I'm hearing maybe that wasn't the case. So we need to think about that next year, what that looks like, and how, again, we're inviting parents in to engage in this opportunity for conversation earlier.
And I'll just add, I have had the opportunity, as Amy has, and to sit down with the teachers in the English department to really hear what they're thinking, the ELA curriculum coordinator, the English department head. And I just want to applaud the high school for coming forward with an idea for change. If they really sat around and said, how can we do better? And it takes a lot to put an idea like this forward. And I just want to applaud the fact that they were willing to do that. And sitting around the table, we're lucky we get to be part of conversations that parents don't. And they are at disadvantage in that way because we see the inner workings of day to day. We get into classrooms, we have those private conversations with teachers, and we really hear where they're coming from. And so I guess I'm just sitting here today saying that I've really been inspired by some of the conversations that we've had with teachers. I've been inspired by the conversations that Amy's leading at the high school. I think she's making some nice headway with a lot of different groups in creating the comfort level for people to speak openly and honestly about where the high school needs to go moving forward. And that takes skill, and that takes a level of honesty and a student focus that I think is just so important as we all move forward. I think all of this dialogue, I thought the parent forum was great. I'll get into more details around that. I think it just makes us all better, and we may not always agree, and we may get to a point where we say, respectfully we disagree, but I think there's always going to be a takeaway from this kind of dialogue, and I would encourage the parents to keep it being engaged and asking the questions and talking with administration. That will help us all move forward. Yep, so I'll just go through the forum. I was there with Doug, we were audience members that night, and so we were able to just see the whole forum play out. Amy was speaking. So I'll just, for those of who are watching that weren't there, I'll just go through some of the details of that night. So as Doug had mentioned, there was about 75 parents that came out, which was a really strong turnout, and it was a mix. It wasn't just parents of students in 8th grade heading off to 9th grade next year. There was engaged parents from elementary, middle school, representing all different types of learners, all different types of groups. The panel that came out, there were 5 English teachers from the high school present to share their experiences and their input, as well as the English Language Arts Curriculum Coordinator, the English Department Coordinator, the Director of Guidance. Amy was there, one of her assistant principals was there, and the special ed coordinator. They were all there in a panel-type format to go through a slideshow presentation as well as answer questions from parents. They presented information that included examples from the curriculum resources they have. They highlighted the Pearson curriculum resources that the district had recently invested in. And one of the big takeaways they wanted to see from parents was just how those resources offer them pretty nice ways to differentiate within that structure. So not only what the teachers are doing on their own, but they also have resources available to them to help them meet students where they're at and take them to the next level. The Director of Guidance offered his perspective in terms of college admissions, that he really did not see this as having impact with regards to college admissions. Colleges are really looking at Wakefield High as a whole and the experience as a whole. He didn't see, from his opinion, that would have much impact. And I think our largest takeaway of the night was that this is definitely beyond 9th grade, the conversation. We did hear from a lot of parents that night, their concerns about some current structures that are in place, how we're supporting our teachers in their work with differentiating to meet the needs of all learners, our students who need to be engaged beyond proficiency, who need to take their skill set to the next level. So we've definitely heard that. Doug mentioned it earlier. Amy mentioned it as well. We're having those conversations as an administrative team, an instructional leadership team, and I don't see them stopping anytime soon. So again, I think that was a big takeaway for us from the night. Another point I just want to put out there, because I think it was asked and it is a concern for many, that there was a statement made that we won't be looking to unlevel honors across other grade levels. This is a 9th grade common experience in the content area of English, and that was the department where we felt it was needed at this point.
So next steps, I think we just want to reiterate that we think our team is ready for this. It's a new opportunity, but we also know that teachers are going to need time, they're going to need training, and they're going to need support. I think the structure of PLCs at the high school would allow these teachers to work together, not only starting their thinking and planning this year. We're going to build in some time over the summer where we can have teachers come in around. We're thinking, Karen and I already started talking with Paul Bavuso around what kind of training we think teachers will need. But the PLC model will help these teachers have common planning time to work together throughout the year. And they will need continual support from us because, I think Kara made the parallel to looking at the co-teaching model. A few years ago when we started co-teaching, when you go into an initiative, you're not exactly sure what you're going to need 4 months down the road, 5 months down the road. We know what we need to start. We know where the conversations will start. We know where the planning will go. But when the kids come in the room, there'll always be unanticipated challenges. I think that what's important for you to hear is that we're committed to providing teachers with the supports that they need that will be ongoing. And I think that by working with the PLCs, keeping close supports with this, working closely with Paul and Bridget, who are committed to this with the teachers, I think that we can provide that time, that training, and the support that we need to further their differentiated instruction and help them meet the needs of kids in this class.
Yeah. And as we mentioned, I think we have some pretty strong teachers who are putting this, sharing their opinions about this. In a lot of ways, this could be considered harder, but the conversation is really stemming around what's best for kids. And I think sometimes when we look at professional development to improve teacher skill set, coaching models often work well, and using our either in-district staff or outside experts to come in and really take classes case by case, students case by case, and offer feedback in that way. So that would be something I think we'll be looking forward to. I will also consider, will continue my work with the curriculum coordinator group. I will work directly with the ELA curriculum coordinator to monitor how this goes, how students' progress is being measured, how we're prioritizing time for teachers to get together and look at student data, look at common assessments, and identify how our students are growing and whether or not they're securing the skills necessary to promote their advancement in future classes. We'll also be looking at parent, teacher, student surveys throughout the year. And then as these students transition to grade 10, that's where, there was a lot of talk about teacher input and grade 9 teachers guiding students, encouraging them, helping them find their path. We're really going to want to monitor that transition to 10th grade and see how our students are doing in whatever path they choose and look at the movement, see if there's any trends with students transitioning out of classes they were recommended for. I think that will be a really interesting data point for us, as well as grade 10 MCAS. And as I mentioned, to be looking at not only the achievement, but the growth scores as well for these students as they transition into 10th grade. So those are just some of our, I didn't know if you had any points on that next step. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, Mr. Cowan.
Sorry, I have a litany. But first of all, I want to share a comment that I made with the superintendent the other day, is that, we are always encouraging our students to be willing to take chances.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of failure. Don't, so you don't take a chance, because otherwise you don't grow.
Right.
And I believe that we need to do that ourselves. But there are, I have 5 things. I'm going to throw them all out at you at once, and you can answer them as you go. Okay. I'm hearing more the opposite of what you've been talking about. I'm hearing that it's more the parents of the high achievers, if you so say it, that they seem more concerned that their child is not going to get the rigor that they expect. It's not that the struggling students going to have a hard time adjusting to the honors course. It's the other way around, that they're concerned that we're taking the rigor away. And I haven't really heard you address that. And why isn't there a greater difference in the rigor between our current CP and honors today? How do we respond to the question of how in the world do we have 2/3 of our students being recommended for honors in the first place? That seems to be a glaring question that we don't seem to have an answer for. And should this program try it, doesn't work, how are we holding those students harmless? Like if we miss the mark, how are we not harming them? And a question is that should we be using this year to do these PLCs and get more of the planning ready for you to really launch in 2021 rather than 1920? So those were my questions.
So I want to talk about the high achievement piece. So I would say that, rigor is not a course. Rigor is the experience that you have in various courses. And I would argue that, in different schools that I've been in, and even in Wakefield, we have courses that we label as different levels that are less rigorous than courses that are labeled at different lower levels, right? So rigor is not a course, it's an experience. I think that if you're thinking about what we talked about in terms of differentiating and in terms of providing supports and challenges, the idea is that teachers in a classroom of a heterogeneous group class, and it's going to kind of touch on your second question as well, are already providing a wide range of strategies to kids. So that 2/3 question. I mean, I would argue, don't we want to be a district where all of our kids are in honors levels and exceeding at high levels as much as they can? And we're providing those supports for that. So I'm not sure that I look at that 2/3 number as a problem. I think what I'm looking at that 2/3 number and saying, and teachers are saying the same thing, there's already such a wide range of learners in the college level and the honors level, based on recommendations coming from 8th grade, based on this growth over the summer, based on the fact that they come into the school and they're sometimes very new kids in a new building. We want to give that opportunity to differentiate across that spectrum of learning, because we think we're doing that quite a lot in 9th grade now. Again, not speaking to the upper levels, but the ninth grade experience. And so I think that if you're thinking about, or we think about what was presented with the Pearson curriculum, when we talk about differentiating in classrooms now, we're talking about resources that kids are getting, experiences that they're getting with texts. I know Bridget the other night spoke really eloquently to sort of what she's already doing already to challenge kids who need more challenge. And again, going back to what Kara said about MCAS, I would make the argument that, yeah, we need to be making sure that on both ends of the spectrum and all levels across it, we're meeting kids where they need to be challenged. So if that's around the types of texts, if that's around the challenges in terms of growing them as writers, if that's the challenge of growing them as people who engage in discourse, which I think our school is too quiet, and I'm always pushing to say, how do we get kids more engaged and active in talking in their discourse? I think that's where many high flyers actually struggle. Because they have a lot of book smart, but not necessarily we're pushing them to engage in their ideas and their words into sort of a dialogue. So I think that, it's not about a book, it's not, that's what rigor is to me.
Yeah.
So
No, I was just going to add to that. I think what also has prompted, the conversation that's also been prompted by all of this is just really, and it was one of the slides of the parent forum, what defines an honor student?
Yeah.
What defines an honors class today? And I think there's maybe some outdated theories or thoughts on what or who an honor student truly is. And we have students that, maybe excel in argument and speaking and communication, but their written skills need further development. Should they be prevented from a quote honors experience and rigor and taking things to the next level? So I love the conversations that are happening. The other conversation around, Amy referenced the male to female difference within our honors classes, and do we want more for our female students than that? What is their version of being an honor student? Is it work completion? Is it covering getting through content? No, we want more for them. We want them to be able to engage and to grow their voice and to grow their skills and be empowered within their honors classes and not view being an honor student as more of a compliance type thing.
question 5.
Sorry.
You have a list.
I figured
No, it's
throw
okay.
them all out at you.
Took notes is good. I like that. We're with
I
you.
remember that.
You talked about why now, why not in a year? I would go back to why English is ready. They've been working with this Pearson curriculum that they have under their belt. It was funny, I was talking with a teacher through a formal a mid-year evaluation this week who was saying, who was one of the teachers who was at the forum, how comfortable she is using Pearson to its capacity to reach the needs of more students. So she's getting better at that because they've been using this curriculum, they're more familiar with it. And so I think that, ripe and ready, the teachers are. I think they're already seeing ways that they are differentiating in their classrooms. They're seeing how that differentiation is just going to be expanded on the spectrum a little bit more if you're talking about a spectrum of learners. And I think that, the time is built in. They want time over the summer. They feel that they're ready. And so I think that for them, the shift is really going to be about meeting the needs of the students in front of them, not necessarily a shift in curriculum as much. It'll be a shift in instructional practices and working with the kids in front of them and thinking about that differentiation piece. Did you want to add to it?
I think if I could just add in, Chris, one of the things that is important is that the term equity is not code for our lowest achievers. It's one of the most critical things. Like, language is really important, right? And so when we say equity, it means all students, right? And so it means our high achievers. So parents are coming to us saying, my child is an advanced learner, they need to be more challenged. This is like, as a teacher, this is a fantastic challenge or problem to have, right? And so we feel like, and I think the English teachers feel like, amen, bring it on. Like, they feel particularly situated and positioned to kind of meet that need in what they're proposing, right? And so this is something that I think can't be lost in this conversation. This is something that the teachers are saying, we're ready to do this now. We think this will serve our students and make a difference for our students at all levels in an equitable way, from our advanced learners to our students that may need support. That's what they're saying, okay? And so so this isn't, the leaders kind of standing up and stumping. This is our teachers coming forward with this concept, which is something that's unique, right? And so I just don't want that to be lost.
think we answered the 5. I'm not sure. We tried.
You good?
Okay, anyone else? Amy?
Thank you again for
welcome.
presenting for the third time. It was really nice actually to see all those parents come out last week.
Agreed.
I didn't realize it was 75, but I think that's amazing. So for some of you who weren't there, I took notes during the forum, and I just want to share some of the questions that were actually asked by some of the parents, if you don't mind.
No.
These were some of the questions from parents. Why the change? And what and where is the data to warrant this change and its positive effects on our students? Has it been too easy for parents and students to sign up for the Honors English? Should our 8th grade students be required to test into the Honors ELA like that of a math department? Will our students be prepared for the expectations of 10th grade honors after this 9th grade leveling approach? And will our students be challenged enough or too much? So with those questions in mind, and even after the 3 presentations and the parent forum, I myself am actually still a little bit confused and concerned about this new ELA course that's being offered. Because in the POS on page 17, it does indicate that this is an honors level course, which you guys have explained. In the POS, it explains the expectations or the description of the curriculum within the course. And I just want to read the first sentence of this that's in here. It states, grade 9 students will enroll in this foundational course that is designed to meet the challenges of a variety of types of different learning styles and prepare all students to meet the demands of the challenging work ahead of them as they embark on their high school experience. And then it just continues to talk about different frameworks within that description for 9th grade honors. But then as you read that page, the next description is 10th grade college prep. And I noticed that the descriptions are exactly the same, except for that first sentence that I read out loud. So I was just really confused as to, me questioning to myself, is this really an honors level course that we're offering to our 9th graders? When it literally has the same description in the POS as the college prep grade 10. And then if you continue to read, it describes the next is the honors level for 10th grade. And this clearly, based on the description, the expectations are very high. It definitely sounds like it's a much more intense course, with high expectations, especially the first sentence says, the decision to enroll in ELA 10 honors should not be taken lightly. So that's almost like a warning, to some people. So it's serious to me, that there is a difference, in my opinion, with this honors English that we're offering when the description in the POS for the college prep grade 10 is virtually the same except for one sentence. So, I understand a lot more goes into, lecturing a class, but it virtually looks the same to me. So I do question whether this really is an honors course. And with that said, it would appear that the blending of these classes, would ultimately result in, you are going to have some high-performing students in the same class as some kids who might struggle and need help. And the curriculum could leave some students without challenge and some unable to access. So that's a concern of mine, all in one particular class. And this is just due to a wide range of learning styles within that class. And this could also, in my opinion, set up some kids for some social emotional, self-confidence as well, even though, it could also empower the students to want to achieve as well. I just want to be mindful of those kids that might feel more sensitive being in the same sort of setting with kids who they know are high achievers. And then the other concern for me is the teachers. I mean, I definitely want to note that I have full 100% faith in our teachers at Wakefield High because I do think they're amazing. But I just wonder if this blended class, though it will be a challenge and I know they can do it, will it complicate, their ability to do their job, because I feel like their jobs are already so very demanding. And I know you had said they will be trained, you guys will be monitoring this, and I really hope that that is done if this passes. And I also just want to ask if they will receive additional prep time in their day, which I'm assuming is already jam-packed. So I just hope that you guys are mindful of making sure that they have extra time to prep for, kind of 2 to 3 different levels of kids that might be in their class at the same time. Especially when, we're looking for them to measure accurate student growth. So I guess with all of that said, for me, I'm just wondering, if this were to happen, and I feel like, it might have to do with some accreditation issues as well. And is there really a need, given the overwhelming parent concerns and issues in regards to that over the last month? I'm just wondering if this is something that we should do. And is this something that really is what is best for the students, incoming freshmen, and for all future students coming into the high school? And if not, is there any way that we could come up with a more creative solution that wouldn't involve leveling such a very important, core class such as the LA?
Can I just add from the district, and then I'll let you get, because I think I'll speak for Doug and myself, just in terms of a district perspective. The information that we've been analyzing as we've gone through this process too. And I think that the piece about 2/3 of students coming up being recommended for honors comes up frequently. And I don't think we can ignore that. I think that is something that we have to look deeper into in terms of why is there that level of student being recommended. And the information we're getting at the high school level tells us maybe all of those recommendations aren't as accurate as they should be. So what is the information we're providing to parents, or we're providing to our middle school counterparts, so that they know exactly what the high school feels like these kids need to really do well within those classes. And we're also looking, the information we have just in terms of movement of students in and out of college prep honors. So I just think that that's something, it was just an alarming, I don't want to say alarming, but it was a noticeable data point for us, and something that I think that we do have to look into. Because I think that has been the piece that our high school teachers are struggling with, and they reference that at the panel, that the overwhelming number of recommendations, yet the skill set might not match what the plan is for that class, and how it's supposed to, and how they're in the teacher's mind it was meant to be run. So
I think I would add, Amy, as well, that, recommendations don't always equal placement, right? So, parents can can disregard that recommendation and opt in, right? So I think what we need to do, and some conversation that we've had, is to really disaggregate that data and really look closely at that. And so I don't think, so to say, just in a kind of a generalized statement, that 70% of the students are recommended from the middle school, I don't think that that's accurate. I think we need to disaggregate that data and kind of report back kind of where we are with that.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like whether this happens or not, the fact that we're creating a conversation about this is awesome, and I think that it's a super effective situation for all of us, especially you as an administration and the teachers. Like, maybe there was a hole somewhere that needs to be filled. So the fact that we're talking about it and we can maybe take a closer look, I think is a great step in the right direction in regards to that. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Yes, RJ.
Just a couple thoughts. My original instinct was that this might not be the best course of action. In general, though, I'm open to innovative ideas, and we don't know yet, but this could be very good. And I'm willing to try this, preferably on a one-year trial basis, but just with the ask that our administration just kind of involve the parents and students as much as possible during and after the years, just by conducting surveys, with both, again, during and after the years, and just to see if this is best moving forward. And I would also just say that, two of the best arguments, and I think this actually came from AJ Beebe, but as far as easing concerns, I think that number one, they've already been with each other through grades 1 through 8 already. So, and number two, the very next year, 10th grade, separated classes once again, CP and honors. The very next year are back. So, I admit, I'm a little hesitant about it, and I can understand the pros and cons of each, but I'm definitely okay with trying it.
Yes, Colleen.
Does that go? I had a question. A lot of the questions were answered, so thank you again. Thank you for crafting another presentation too, that I think it's important that you took the whys and the questions that were asked at the forum and tried to really specifically answer those. And I found that this presentation was able to do that even more specifically. So I hope that helps our public as well. So in bringing up the PLCs and planning and development, to me, it seems like they would be more consistent and collaborative because you are collaborating a heterogeneous class, you know, so it is, you know, going to be a challenge, but maybe they're more collaborative and more consistent across the board. We know that these ELA teachers also teach other classes as well. So, but just speaking to this class, they're able to come together to talk about, and even within those classes, you know, they look different, but what the approach is should be consistent. So to me, that's a positive in that, you know, okay, this is a challenge and there's going to need to be development around that, but that development will be consistent across the board. And that's exciting to me. So a couple other points that I had wrote down. One of the quotes that I wrote down was moral will. I think Amy might have said that, and that is something that I always feel like I come back to when talking about things. And, you know, as a school committee member and as a parent, sometimes it's hard because you're going back and forth and you're looking at your children individually, but it is our job to look at the entire student population and what is best for the entire population, not just what affects my, you know, children. And I think that this is exactly what that does. You know, and we're looking at students across the board and what is going to grow each and every one of those students. Doug may laugh at this, but I got this in an email from my son's college, and I found that, I'm sure this is happening all around, and we all got these emails, but this came to me this week, and it just speaks to sort of perspective. So, you know, my oldest is a freshman in college, and I have some kids in high school and whatnot, but understanding how students make choices and understanding the world that they're entering into after high school and how we're preparing them from the time that they step into high school for that foundation, right, which is different than middle school. This is a new foundation and new support. So I got an email from my son is at UMass Amherst, so I got an email saying, college is a place where all students will mature intellectually and socially if they embrace particular behaviors and attitudes. As you communicate with your student, encourage them to fully engage in their college experience and operate with a growth mindset. Here are some insights to share with them and ways you can show support. My mouth is dry for some reason. The first point, I only copied down one of the first points. So we are a community of learners, and everyone has something to contribute and something to learn. Encourage your student to be modest, respectful, embrace the world around them, and welcome other people's points of view. So that to me was just like, yes, yes, you know, and that may simplify things, but you've spoken to all of the reasons behind that and all of the ways behind that. And I feel like I echo what you said, Chris, at the beginning, that we are trying to set a model of behavior for our students to take risks and think that they can do more than maybe what they've been told to back in elementary school or maybe by their environment at home or whatever it may be. We need to show them that we are also going to take those risks along with them. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Oh, thanks, yeah,
Mr. Leon.
yeah, thanks, yeah. So I first I just wanted to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, nor did I, but I'm like, well,
Yeah,
who am I to oppose such a thing?
sorry, I wanted to echo Amy's comments and Kara's earlier about how important I think this moment is, like, for the district, right? Because you know, this is my 6th year on the school committee, and this is one of the you know, one of the most content-rich conversations we've had. And it's really, this is about the core, right? This is about the most important things that happen in the classroom with our students. So just wanted to mark that, and of course thank all the parents. I didn't get a chance, I missed the last school committee meeting, a chance to go to the forum, but I was able to watch your presentation on WCAT at our last school committee meeting. And also wanted to mention, you know, the amount of passion and knowledge that you bring to this conversation, Amy, is really impressive. And very much appreciate that. For me, the defining element of decision making is really I think goes back to the point that Doug made, that this really is a bottom-up initiative. This is coming from our teachers, and there's unified perspective among the professional educators in our district. And you've listened to the parents. A lot of really, really good, important concerns raised, but you still all believe that this is the right way to go. And I just think as a school committee member, that's what I lean on. That's principally what I lean on in my decision making. So I totally support this.
Great. Kara, could I ask you to go back one slide?
Sure.
So let me start by adding or suggesting, starting with Doug and certainly both of you and the entire ELA team, really to echo what everyone has already said, but a big thank you that this has been truly an engaging community exercise. While it may have been agonizing at times, and I say that a little tongue-in-cheek, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
Because the fact that we got 80 people or 75 people to turn out at a conversation around English language arts in the 9th grade,
Agreed.
I think is a big deal, and I think that's extraordinary.
I do too.
I hope you have some conversation around math and we get another 75 to show up. And I'm not advocating change, but I'm
Nor am I,
advocating,
just
I'm
to be clear.
advocating more engagement. I think it's wonderful. I truly.
We talked about that just in
Yeah.
terms of comfort level, and this things can get heated, it can get uncomfortable at times, but if we're not uncomfortable, we're not growing, we're not changing, we're not moving forward.
Right.
So we've talked a
I
lot
love
about
to
that.
use the phrase community conversations. That no matter what policy, what decisions before us, big picture, little picture, minutia, having a community conversation is in an open, transparent, honorable way, is how we've been able to make the progress that we have in the last X number of years in the Wakefield Public Schools. We wouldn't be in the place open to this type of change without an environment that allowed for such a dialogue. So I truly want to thank you for your openness, especially both of you being brand new. Doug's been around a while now. He's new being the big cheese, but he's not necessarily new to the craziness in Wakefield. But that being said, I truly appreciate the work and the thoughtfulness that's gone in for both of you in the last month, as well as the ELA teams. So I want to say that principally up front. I do have two questions and then a thought to share. One of the things that came out of the parent forum last week, one of the questions that came out, and Amy, you were wonderfully right on, and at the same time being clear. The question being, why aren't we going to do this with other subjects? And is this the beginning of a slide? Is this the beginning of something that we're not looking at? Is this the beginning step? We'll see how it goes, and then next year or 2 years from now, we'll come back and we'll say math or social studies or whatever. And if I'm remembering your answer correctly, and please correct me if I'm not, but if I'm remembering your answer correctly, something like you had no intention of that, but the honest piece of that is you can't predict what's going to happen to some generation, some future principal, some future superintendent, some future school committee can't necessarily make that as a promise. Am I
Agreed.
close to what
That's
you
what
said?
I said,
Okay.
yeah.
So with that in mind, without the question being, I didn't necessarily like the question asked because it didn't get to the heart.
Okay.
The heart of the question wasn't, so you're going to do this to science next. To me, the question was, why aren't you doing this with math and science?
Right.
If it's such a good idea in ELA, why isn't it a good idea in math and science and social studies?
Right. So I can speak to some of the points that I think I spoke to tonight in terms of readiness of staff, right? We have a core group of teachers who have been working on this, thinking about this. are ready to sort of excel with this and take it on, as Colleen talked about, right? Really buy into it and take it on. I think that the work around the curriculum mapping, the resources, the work on the move from the Common Core in English makes English sort of ready for it. Is that to say that other content areas are not ready for it, or it wouldn't work in other content areas? I'm not sure, right? But I think it would be a slightly different conversation, and feel free to jump in as well. But I think that, like, the conversation that we've been having with mathematics and thinking about how math builds incrementally in a way that writing is more of an iterative process, right? And so I think fundamentally there are different subjects around that. I guess, however, you could make the argument, and again, I am not making this argument, right? Someone could make the argument, it could come from the department, it could come from the teachers, that the freshman year could be another opportunity. And I'll give you an example. My child is in a school district where first trimester freshman year, math is not leveled. So regardless of what you were in 8th grade, and you are leveled in 8th grade, you take a trimester and you all take Algebra 1 because they feel that it's a good foundational course. And they are heterogeneously grouped, and then from there you build. And so then you either move right to geometry or you stay in Algebra 1 for the rest of the year. It's working in that particular district. So I know educators there, they believe in that. So, I'm not sure, but I know why English, right? I can answer that question, and I think it speaks to all those reasons why English is ready for this right now.
I'll just add just the whole piece that Al had mentioned, just in terms of this being a ground up, this being, a group of teachers looking at the data they have in front of them, looking at the student performance that they have in front of them. I don't think this is something that you can drive administratively, to make a directive across the board. I think there has to be, an understanding, buy-in from teachers that this will improve their practice, that this will improve outcomes for their students. So I don't think it's something that can just be a directive top-down. So that would be my response.
And I don't know if that really answered your question, but it speaks to Amy's question too, around like, the teachers are on some level taking on a little more, but they're passionate about it, they're excited about it, and I think Kara kind of touched on, they feel that it will work better. Things are not broken, and I try to say that in the parent forum. Things are not completely broken, but I think things could be working better for all students, and I think teachers feel that way, specifically around this 9th grade piece. So.
Well, certainly, I agree, and I don't think things are broken. I'm a continuous improvement sort of thinker.
Right.
So what makes something better doesn't mean that today's bad.
Right.
It just means that tomorrow can be better.
Right.
And the next day should be even better than that, right? So, no, you have answered the question that I really think was at the heart of what was asked a week ago, and sort of what was the heart of what got me percolating and thinking about that. The next question, my last question, and then a thought, is how will we know How will we know success? What will success look like? Maybe it's a year from now when we're having this conversation. Maybe it's 5 years from now. I don't necessarily know the answer. That's why I'm sort of asking, and maybe we don't know the answer. But how will we know if this is working?
I want to talk about anecdotally, and then you can talk about the data piece that you spoke about maybe. I think anecdotally classrooms will look and feel different. I think that I spoke to that engagement piece. I spoke to that discourse piece. I think that I would like to see 9th grade classrooms where all students felt more comfortable engaging, regardless of where they see themselves as learners on a spectrum of writers, readers, strength in speaking, whatever that is. I think secondly, I think our English teachers have been doing a really nice job in their PLCs at creating student learning goals, where they're looking at growth in writing. And I know, and again, we don't necessarily track this and measure this for evaluation. They do this for their own work in PLCs to sort of track and evaluate how well they're moving students. And I know, listening to teachers, thinking about when students are resistant to move, right? Or when students don't see themselves as needing to move along a spectrum of growth in writing. I would hope that teachers will have data on students to see more measures of growth. And so we'll see that in their their student learning goals from the beginning to the end of the year. And that's what they're discussing in PLCs and sharing with Paul and Bridget as they meet as a department. So that's an indicator that we hope teachers will see.
Yeah. I'll just echo that, internal data, state data, just teacher feedback, teacher observations. I'd also like to see sharing of information. We're talking a lot about transitions from level to level too. So as our teachers gather information from this class and look at specifically what they need to target with certain students, that we're sharing that information, and we're, part of my job district-wide is looking level to level to level to make sure that there's that vertical alignment. So I think that will be some important information gathering that we'll need to be sharing with our middle school level and then our elementary level as well, just to have that progression of skill.
I mean, I think there's a long-term data point. I think we're looking at a long-term data point of MCAS. I'm not going to say that this is a silver bullet that's going to improve growth in MCAS, but I'm interested to see if we implement this, where this class of students coming in, what we'll see is a difference in growth measure. Now, can we say that there's a correlation there, or a causation? Not necessarily, right? It could just be a causation, the group in front of us. But I think that would be interesting. I also would like to, Doug and I have talked about our AP courses and how many students are interested in taking AP courses, how many students are ready for AP courses, what do our AP scores look like. I don't want to get too hung up on AP scores, but I think it's another data point that we can look at long term to see, are our numbers growing? Are more kids feeling comfortable to challenge themselves and rise to higher levels of challenge in our AP courses? So I think those are all there.
And I think this also speaks to this subgroup that has come up around, our most advanced learners. How are we, tracking and kind of supporting and being able to kind of specify what our advanced learners doing? And so AP is one, MCAS another, but, there's also kind of this notion of really looking at, not only access in terms of numbers, but how are people projecting, right? How are kids projecting, And so I think that this is something that we're really committed to, and I think it's something that is going to be part of this conversation moving forward, a fundamental part of this conversation moving forward.
Tom, can I just make one
Yes,
brief
certainly.
addition to my comments? And your last question, I think, prompted this. The other thing I think that's worth emphasizing is we're not alone here, right? We're not the only district that's doing this.
we're not.
In your earlier presentation, you listed just 5 of many districts that have gone this route, including Cambridge, Ringe, and Latin, the Concord, Westford, and Weston school districts, right? So I don't know a lot about those districts, but my guess is that they do not take college readiness lightly, right? They don't take their high-achieving students lightly. These are very, very high-achieving districts. So I imagine we can also, there's a lot of inter-district learning in terms, in evaluation models that we can build on too, right? Is that?
There's
yeah,
no question,
yeah,
and I think,
yeah.
one of the things that we've talked about is the expectations.
Right.
We have high expectations for our students.
Yeah.
Right? And we're hearing at the college level that more and more students are going to college and needing to take remedial level classes.
Yeah.
To be prepared to enter fundamental Calc 1 and writing courses. And so, I have to tell you, that's something that I think we need to pay attention to and respond to. And I think us paying attention to what's happening here at this level is also part of this conversation as well.
Good. Oh, Amy.
I just have, one more question, getting back to what I actually said about the POS, where this is labeled as an honors level course. I still question whether it is actually an honors level course. And I don't think it was addressed. So I'm just really wondering, is this a true honors course? Because it's labeled as an honors course.
Agreed.
Because it has the same sort of description as the college prep for grade 10. So I do still just kind of question whether this really is an honors course, and the kids who belong in that honors course, will they be challenged enough? I mean, I just am really confused still about how it's being labeled as honors when it just doesn't appear to be.
Yep. Did you want-
I was just going to give my understanding is just that it will hold honors weight. It's one common experience, and in the information that I know and that I think about in terms of honors classes is that you really want to have students on that trajectory where they're independently applying skills that they've learned, where they're really driving the instruction and taking things to the next level. What I've heard for information is that not all of our students who are being recommended for honors classes have that are at the point where they're independently able to apply skills and to really drive the instruction in an honors class. So I guess to say, is it truly an honors class? I think Amy's talked a lot about, there are standards that we're expected for our students to achieve and show proficiency on, and that's really the ninth grade standards are going to be the focus. And some students may need further skill development, some students may be able to move towards advancement to independent application, but that's what the focus of the class will be. I don't know if I'm...
No, and I think Bridget answered that question a little bit the other night. She touched on it. I don't know if she answered your question specifically, but I think so is it an honors class? Yes, it is. And I think what an honors class has evolved to in ELA has changed significantly. Bridget talked about, when she first started teaching, Bridget Haggerty, who's the department coordinator, talked about when she first started teaching. It was the same way when I first started teaching English. If you had an honors level, you were teaching 8 books or 10 books or 12 books, right? And if you had a college level, you were teaching less books. It's not about that anymore. College and honors levels in ELA across the board are working on the same skills and strategies as outlined by the MAS frameworks. What's changed is how, and I think you asked this question earlier, it was a different question, but it's this, I hear your point. Students who are proficient or who are mastering certain skills need to be challenged, and they may be sitting right next to a student who is struggling with the same skill. And so the teaching and the learning has to be about how do those students work together when they can on skill sets, and then how do they need to be challenged independently, supported, challenged differently. Can our teachers do that? Yes. Do they have the instructional expertise? Maybe not 100%, but we're going to get it for them. Yep. Do they have the resources to do it? Yes, because you help us purchase curriculum that allows for that. And so I do think, and I'm not trying to not answer your question, Amy, what I'm saying is I think it's a different understanding of what an honors course looks like now. And so I truly believe that all students in those classes are going to be held to high levels of those standards. I would, on a side note, say that framework that we have in our program of studies needs to be rethought in terms of what does an honors course look like, the grid at the front of the book. We weren't ready to take that on this year. That's a bigger conversation that we really need to talk about, and that Kara and I have been talking about in terms of bringing to teachers and talk about what is the difference between an honors experience and a college experience with the dawn of the Common Core and strategy-based standards-based teaching.
Well, because it does appear to have such a huge difference between college prep grade 10 and honors grade 10. I mean, it's like night and day.
Right.
So why is it different in ninth grade?
Right. And so again, I think it goes back to that foundational piece and how we're getting to know our kids better. And so I think that after a year with students, we may find that many of our students will choose to go high level in math and science because they're starting to take APs already, and they're just not interested in moving themselves maybe that much further or that deeper. And I do think that starts to change as students mature in the building. That's why we're really focused on that ninth grade piece. But I would say that it is. We are talking about an honors, a course that'll be offered at the honors weight, at the honors level.
I think that's a big concern for parents.
Sure.
Just from what I've heard. So, if there's any way next year to make sure that that's communicated to parents by, via example or back to school night or something that can maybe just confirm to those parents that they are learning at this level, that might help them understand it and feel more comfortable with it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's helpful.
Chris?
2 quick things. If this does pass, you are going to have to go back through this book because there are references within the book to both levels that would have to be removed.
Yeah.
On a completely other note, I noticed, and maybe it's been there before and I missed it, but with some of our AP courses, we specifically say that if you take this course, you must take the test. That test involves a fee. And if we're not paying the fee, we can't require the test.
Right. So AJ talked about this when he presented the program of studies. I thought he mentioned, and perhaps he didn't, that has become a conversation about how we will support families who can't afford to take the test. That's already a fee built into College Board, so for families who can't afford to take the test.
It's waived.
It's waived.
Right.
a very reduced fee, so that is already built in. You actually, schools in Massachusetts, many schools do require students to take the AP test if they take the course.
And I totally
and-
understand why overload a course of students who aren't interested in taking the test. I get that.
Right, right.
And, but I'm thinking more from a budgetary point, that we should be thinking in terms of we need to pay for these tests, because no different than if we're gonna require devices, we need to be able to provide devices.
Right.
I think there's somebody someplace is going to challenge that legally, and we would lose.
Yeah.
Excited to talk about that during budget.
I was going to say, it's very a timely conversation.
Yeah.
And I think it's a point well taken, but I think that we kind of surveyed families this year to see students who were in the classes, how many were taking the test, how many, if this were, there are some who opt out, not many. I don't have the exact numbers. AJ has the numbers.
I know one course that has a kind of a low turnout.
Yes, you may.
And I fully support the idea that they should take the test, but we
Right,
should be
right.
paying for it.
Well, and I think that's what we're trying to figure out is sort of how do we support that? But I do think now that students know this year going into it, that that's part of the course, that it is, it's really changing kids' perspective on how many APs can I handle, right? Because it's also talking about that balance, so that we're making sure kids aren't overloading just to get the APs on their schedule. But then we have students mid-year who are like, I can't make it, it's too much. So all those pieces.
There's many layers to this, and so I'm excited to talk about this more. I think that this is
It's a piece.
part of a bigger conversation. Our advanced placement test scores are used for college advancement. So it's used for something outside of our system, right? And so we can talk more about this.
Okay.
Okay. I wanted to,
Motions?
no, not yet, I actually wasn't finished. Fair enough.
Good.
The reason why I asked you to bring up the slide is I wanted to reread the last point, my last question being about how do we know success? And while I'm certainly not suggesting you amend the PowerPoint, but in your thinking, somehow, I could throw out, maybe create something around the next steps that, how do we benchmark some of this? How do we define what assessing success through assessments and observations? I get what that is, but is there a way to benchmark? Maybe there isn't, or maybe it's too squishy right now. But I think that's one of the things, given the really quality dialogue that we've had in the last month as a community, I don't think that sort of question is gonna go away. And frankly, it shouldn't.
Right.
It should be like, people should just be able to ask any of us, or certainly you guys, how's it going?
Right.
I mean, a year from now, or next November, when we have a conversation about the program of studies at the school committee meeting, we can be, how's it going, that sort of thing. I think that's a fair and open question, so that's actually why I asked to pull that slide back up, getting to the benchmark piece about how do we know what success looks like. One of the things that I just will add, as my colleagues have, I intend to support this motion. And I wanted to say that I certainly don't envy your positions in pushing forward a change, or bringing, supplying enough of an environment that the teachers feel they can come to the three of you and other colleagues to be able to make such an impactful change. That isn't easy, but I think it's the work that we ask of you. As we expecting a pathway of improvement, then we need to be able to have conversations like this. And we need, whether it's a risk, I think that's the word Chris used earlier, whether it's a risk, or whether it's a leap, or whether it's a faith, or whether it's just a good quality exercise that we've thought through a bit, or a combination of all of those things. That's how improvement is truly made. And so while I don't envy, that, I appreciate the leadership and the difficulty sometimes that it may take to march down a street with knowing that there are those that don't necessarily appreciate the path. one of the things that has been most impressive, to me anyways, and notwithstanding any of the quality work that you've put into the presentations themselves, is the united front that, starting with the teachers through your team, the ELA team, right up to the superintendent, that it is clear, it certainly is clear to me, I can't speak for my colleagues, but clear to me that the educators in which we empower, engage, and employ are giving us some really quality feedback. Now, we have the luxury of taking that or not, I suppose, and I don't say that tongue in cheek, but it's, what's impressive to me is the united front and the passion with which you bring this information forward, and you bring this recommendation forward. Also pass along that coming, from the bottom up with the teachers. I think that the teachers that were there, I don't think the entire department was there, but almost everyone was there last week. And I think everyone that was there spoke eloquently about the work that they're prepared to do. Just as you were saying earlier, Amy, they're prepared to take this on, and they showed that. And that's impressive. I mean, certainly a huge shout out to our English teachers for the gumption to make this happen, and the stick-to-itiveness that each of you have had in that work. So that has been most impressive to me, almost equally, frankly, to the academic prowess with which you brought this forward, is the passion, because that can't be understated. And when there are times that we need to tip the scales or add weight to what's being brought forward, the united front of our professional educators is where I always like to lean with the added weight, and you've been incredibly persuasive in that regard. So I know the last month hasn't been easy. I'll finish where I started, but thank you and your entire team for making this, for being so willing to engage the community at any level. And I know that piece isn't going to end tonight. So, any other questions, comments? We have a motion, two motions actually, one at a time.
Is it necessary to do two?
I would like us to.
Okay, then I think we should do the second one, either reword the first one or do the second one first.
Do the second one first.
Okay.
Great idea.
All right, so I move the school committee approve the recommendations to unlevel grade 9 ELA as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 5-1.
And
Second motion.
Move the school committee approve the Wakefield Memorial High School Program of Studies for 2019-20 as presented.
Second.
Discussion?
Do
Yes?
we need to amend that motion because of the first motion?
Yes, the intention of the motions in the sequence that they were proposed was to have the first motion
Yeah.
exclude the grade 9
Okay.
ELA piece, and to be able to allow members to approve the rest of the document,
Yeah.
99% of the document, without an omnibus motion.
So maybe with.
So I'd like us to actually have the motion read that way, if anyone is up for it, in case our member
I'll
would like
withdraw
not
that
to
original.
approve everything
Move the
else.
school committee approve the Wakefield Memorial High School Program of Studies for 2019-20 with the exception of the ELA grade 9 content.
Yes, that was my intention.
Okay.
Was that what the committee understood my intention to be when I
Yeah.
articulated? Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, passes unanimously. And thank you all. Thank you all for what I think sincerely has been a great community conversation. And we should have lots more of them. So, okay. Moving on. Superintendent Lyons. D.
I'm just getting back up to the top.
SEAM Collaborative.
So the annual agreement for SEAM Collaborative is in the packet. The only two changes, the only language changes in the annual agreement, I reviewed kind of the budget report in there, kind of state of their collaborative address, and 2 meetings ago. We talked about that. I talked about the preamble, about how we are in a membership of the collaborative to meet the needs, special education and program needs of our students, and programs that we don't or cannot offer here in district, because sometimes they're cost prohibitive, but the needs are such that not only us, but other members who are in the collaborative are able to kind of send students there, and the collaborative has been able to create programs to meet the needs of our students. And so this is an annual agreement that is entered into between the Wakefield Public Schools and the SEAM Collaborative. It is, I think it's procedural in that I feel like I've discussed all of these items before, or all of the parts of what kind of makes SEAM kind of special to us in our relationship. But the only thing that has changed in the annual agreement is that North Andover has joined the collaborative. And so on page 3, so the only changes are in red, right? And they say North Andover in 2 places. So with the exception of that, I think I'm hopeful that the committee can make a motion to accept the annual agreement as it is presented.
If we may, let's have the motion and then have a discussion.
I'm just confused, why do we need the word approve amendments then? Because we're really approving the entire.
So the amendments, plural, are those 2 items, those 2
But-
changes in text.
We understand that that's the change.
Yeah,
But we're really approving the agreement
correct,
as presented, not just the amendments.
correct.
Right, approving the agreement as amended. Right. The agreement's
what-
being amended.
That's what the motion should say, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So we move the school committee approve the SEAM Collaborative Agreement as amended.
Second.
Discussion. The only thing I would say, I think it's wonderful that North Andover is adding. I think the more communities that join and band together, the more successful that collaboratives will be. So I think that's terrific.
Yeah,
We'll welcome
No bias
welcome
there.
our friends.
yeah, no,
Welcome our friends. It's SEAM. Welcome our friends from North Andover joining SEAM Collaborative. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously.
The next item is the memorandum of understanding between the Wakefield Police and the Wakefield Schools. This is an 18-page document that is the guidelines by which we kind of work, not only with the police station outside of school, but also with our school resource officers in school. It's very detailed, and it's a model that is given to us by the district attorney. And so, and it was kind of looked at by our attorney to kind of just give us some feedback. And so this document really kind of sets the expectation around communication, relationships, and how our SROs can not only help our schools be more safe places and act as kind of, a deterrent for anyone that might try to kind of, act in ways that are unsafe in schools. But it's also a part where the relationships that our SROs make and the way that they embed themselves as part of the administrative team and in part of our crisis teams that has really helped us make a difference. So this document kind of delineates those things and how we will kind of work with one another. I'm particularly pleased that, we've worked with the chief on this, and chief has signed off on it. You'll see his signature on there, and my signature's on there as well. And so we would like the support of the committee in kind of seeing that document. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer about any parts. With the exception of that, I feel like this is standard procedure and information that we need to share, both with the committee and with the community.
Very good. We have a motion, and that be read first.
Okay, move that the school committee approve the recommendation for the Wakefield Police, Wakefield Public Schools Memorandum of Understanding as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion, Mr. Lakos.
Thanks. Yeah, I had a couple of questions and then a couple of observations, Doug. So the observations are, first of all, it's really instructive to read this. It's, in some way, I think we've known that this model, the school resource officers, has worked well in the Wakefield Public Schools, and, you know, we had the presentation from them, I think it was last year, and it's really, really encouraging to see the comprehensiveness of the approach here, and the emphasis on prevention, on relationship building, on collaboration between the schools and the police department, and the other emphasis on mental health and social and emotional needs, and the distinction between the role of the resource officers and the role of the educators and the role of the health professionals in the school. And those are all very clearly articulated in this document, so it was really instructive. A couple of questions. One is that, just procedurally, so you've signed this is the first time we've seen this as a school committee. Is this the first time we've entered into an MOU?
So this is not the first time that we've entered into an MOU. There's been an MOU in place.
Okay.
With the legislation around and the state's desire to kind of highlight the school resource officer and how they should be used.
Okay.
The MOU has actually been expanded.
Okay.
But this is not new.
Okay.
There's new language in here,
Okay.
specifically around the SRO, but we had an MOU in place.
Okay.
That is supposed to be kind of renewed annually.
Okay.
And so.
I just don't remember ever seeing this before in the school committee. Am I wrong?
You are wrong.
We voted on this in the past? Oh, sorry. Okay. Well, I'm glad I'm paying
Not
attention to it this year.
Not within the last couple of years.
It only
Not
took
with-
6 years, Greg.
Okay, so one thing that did strike me, though, and I ask you about this. So this is the SRO selection process.
Yep.
So the selection of each school resource officer remains within the sole discretion of the chief of police. Then it goes on to articulate, you know, the criteria through which the chief selects that person.
Yep.
Is it fair to ask whether that selection should be a joint effort of the chief of police and the principal and/or the superintendent, since this person is, you know, going to be working there? And is that something we could negotiate in a future year?
So we could take a look at this in another year,
Yeah.
but I think one of the reasons why that it's highlighted this way is because there's a clear kind of delineation that the supervisor, that the SRO reports to the chief.
Sure.
Okay,
Which
directly
makes
to the
perfect
chief,
sense,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so because he is the supervisor, he is his superior officer.
Yeah.
He is responsible for the hire in the assignment in that place.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I will share with you that Chief Smith has been a really remarkable collaborator for us.
Yeah.
And takes feedback and is open to feedback.
I assumed that
he
was the
expects
case.
it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, sure.
And so
Yeah.
he doesn't make these decisions in isolation.
Right.
Right? And so when we're talking about the position and when we look at how the position has grown and how our SROs are now incorporated into our professional development work with teachers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That outgrowth or that opportunity came from the chief and us at central office talking about what more we could do or
Yeah.
what could we do differently.
Yeah.
And other opportunities, both for kids and families, came from our SROs coming to us saying, you know, we would like to, provide a Rad Kids opportunity. We would like to do some work at the middle level and at the elementary level, which has been great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. And then my other question was in the Section C, SRO training. Again, very comprehensive child and adolescent development, conflict resolution,
Right.
diversion strategies and practices. What I didn't see, though, which I wonder, again, in future years, as our district becomes more racially and socioeconomically diverse,
Cultural competency.
is diversity, equity, and inclusion
Right.
training. Because the statistics, and this is not Wakefield, but the statistics nationwide, as you probably know, demonstrate clearly that, black students, minority students,
Right.
students in special ed
Right.
are targeted disproportionately
Right.
from law enforcement in
Right.
schools, right? That, I don't think that's happening in Wakefield, but we never want it to happen in Wakefield, right? So that's another area that we might explore in
Yeah,
the future.
no, Greg, I think you bring up a great point.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm curious about that I'd like to ask Chief about and maybe report back
Yeah.
is, do all officers now go through that type of training?
Right, that's a
Not
good
just
question. Yeah,
SROs.
Yeah, yeah.
So my.
They may have it
My
coming into
working
it
theory
already.
is that
Yeah, yeah.
all officers go
Yeah.
through that level of
Yeah,
training.
yeah.
And because all officers go through it, the SRO is also trained in that, it's just not
Right.
delineated here.
Right, but then translating it into the school environment is a
Point is
particular
not,
expertise.
point is not missed
yeah.
on me, and I think, I think that is absolutely something that we could take a look at moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Chris?
I have to admit that I did not try to absorb all 18 pages of this prior to the meeting, which is my fault. But a problem I've had with this agreement in the past, and I don't see that it's there, so maybe it's corrected, is we had incidences, say, 12 years ago,
Yeah,
where it was school vacation.
yeah,
There was some party at somebody's house
Yep.
on a Saturday night, and there was alcohol found by the police.
Mm-hmm.
The remedy was to suspend the kid from school. And I objected to that because I didn't see, I mean, regardless of any MIAA rules.
Right.
That's a totally different subject.
right,
That, a police matter
Right.
outside of school on a weekend
right.
shouldn't result in a suspension from school. Is that gone from here? I'm not seeing it, so.
Well,
wanted
I
to-
mean, there's, so 12 years, I wasn't here
I
12
know.
years ago,
No,
and
right.
so, and nor have I heard about anything like that since I've been here. It doesn't seem reasonable to me, and so that's not to say that it
I
might
wanted to be
not
sure I didn't miss it in here.
be proposed, it's not in here,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. That was the
Short
only-
answer,
The
not
only
in
time I
here.
ever had a problem, 'cause I truly appreciate all the work of the SROs. I'm not
Yeah.
sure even at that time we even had
Yeah.
SROs.
I don't,
and-
I
and-
don't think we did.
There is a provision in here that I did notice. It's, sorry, I just wanna make sure I get.
It does talk about outside of school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a
report-
reporting, it's a
Reporting
reporting.
guidelines,
It's re-
right, right. Doesn't mean that.
Reporting is
Yeah,
one thing,
that's
but.
exactly right,
but
yeah,
To
Yeah.
require the school to suspend the student for
Right.
something that happened.
It's something
outside,
entirely different,
so-
right,
Exactly, yeah.
right.
Okay, very good. That's all.
Thanks
It's
for the
always been my
question.
worry,
Yeah.
that they would creep back in somehow.
Any other questions, comments on the MOU? Seeing none, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just very quickly, in regard to just a budget update, Michael Pifferling and I made a presentation to FinCom conceptually around where we are at with the budget process. And they also provided some questions for us, which were helpful in allowing us to clarify kind of some of the priorities that we move forward. And they also kind of took the opportunity to provide us some feedback in regard to the things that they think are particularly important for us to be attentive to in thinking about the budget and the financial health of the school, not the financial health of the community. And so, which is critically important. We understand our responsibility, and we also understand that what we do in the schools is not separate from the town. And so I think our collaborative work with FinCom members on kind of our subcommittee has been particularly helpful. And so that's just a very quick update there, and I can get into more detail later about the budget. Yeah.
And there'll be 2 weeks, right?
Right.
We'll be looking at the budget on the
We will be.
26th, right?
Right.
Budget proposal, yeah,
Right.
correct. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Doug?
Nope, that's it for me.
Okay. Subcommittee reports. Finance and Facilities, Mr. Diakos.
We have not met since our labor relations subcommittee went over. So we're just, we'll have one meeting in advance of the 26th with, we hope, members of the FinCom to help inform the discussion with the superintendent at our next meeting.
Very good. Labor Relations, just quickly add that we've begun negotiations with Unit A. We will next begin negotiations with AFSCME. Scheduling of those meetings are underway now, and we will carry on. Stay tuned. Policy, Mr. Callahan.
Nothing pressing at the moment.
Okay. Student Services, Ms. Fortier is not here tonight. Any member of the Student Services want to say anything about the last meeting or two? Or
Do you want to speak or should I?
You can do it.
So, we did meet last week. The superintendent had coordinated a survey that went out. Our initial focus is really on trying to help students, specifically on IEPs, but maybe we'll glean information from that subgroup to gather, to expand out. But for transitions, be from 4th to 5th and from 8th to 9th grades, and how those families feel their transitions could be made better. What was good, what was bad, and are we missing something that they need? That was the content of the survey, and we will be meeting again within the next few weeks to go over that. I forget. I think we set a date, but I don't remember what it was. Yeah, because Ann said she couldn't make it because she was going to be out of commission for a couple of weeks, but she thought we should meet without her. I recall that discussion, don't you?
We'll have to reconnect on a date.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Did
can do
you
that.
recall a date, Judy? You didn't. You weren't that. You couldn't make that meeting. That's right. You got called away. Okay. All right, so we'll be meeting again shortly. To
You
take
just
that
want
to
to
the
note,
next
like,
step.
the survey also went out to teachers as well.
Oh,
So
good.
4th and 5th grade teachers, 8th and 9th grade teachers, in addition to the parents.
So the parents of 5th grade students
4 and 5.
presently?
Current 6th grade. So how did your
Oh, they're
transition
current
go?
6th grade.
Yeah.
So
Right.
there's 4 data sets. So there's parents of kids that have transitioned
Yep.
and parents of students that are transitioning. So parents in 5th grade and parents in 4th grade, parents in 9th grade and parents in 8th grade. So there's 4 data sets.
Okay.
And we looked at teachers as well within those data sets, right? So they have separate survey for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just kids who are on the IEPs or 504 plans.
Right.
And then the data that we did receive, we did go over, and you were going to extend it for another few days.
Right.
So then maybe in our next meeting, we'll have a better idea as to what the results were after you extended it for more parents to respond. But around 53, actually, parents did respond to the survey, which was kind of nice.
Which is great. We had a similar response from teachers.
Yeah.
And what was nice is that they highlight, so the data correlates with some of the priorities that parents have highlighted and teachers have highlighted in the budget survey.
Right.
So in terms of resources and
Yeah.
support, it gives us a kind of a separate way as our check and balance with our initial survey around budget.
Yeah.
So which is nice, and I think that I hope to kind of be able to share more from the Student Services Subcommittee in regard to some recommendations that I think we'd like to make. Is that fair, Aim? You think I'm missing
Yeah,
anything?
no, I think that is fair. I think
Okay.
it just kind of linked everything together. The survey was helpful in connecting the dots.
I think so.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
a budget standpoint. It should be exciting.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. We certainly look forward to more information about that when it's available. That's great. Future meeting dates and agenda items. Our next meeting, 2 weeks from this evening, Tuesday, February 26th, 7:30 p.m. School committee comments going around the table. RJ?
All set, thank you.
All set? Colleen?
I don't think I got to do this before, just in wrapping up the conversation with Elaine. I just wanted to, again, thank our parents for their engagement and their questions and their comments. And that either way, whether, you know, they supported or didn't support, or we're trying to understand sort of what's behind the recommendation, I think that everything was heard and taken in, and always, like the Amy and Kara were able to say, it always moves you forward. So I just want our parents to, you know, I think everyone reiterated that it's very important to always hear the concerns. And Doug spoke to that piece of, you know, concerns that go outside of ninth grade too. So always just to continue to support parents and their voices. Thank you.
You're here. Amy?
Just thank you again for the presentation. The presentations are always very informative. I am still slightly disappointed, I'll just say it. But I am hopeful that, you know, now that it has passed, that hopefully it will work, and we'll see some positive changes to the program. And everybody stays mindful of keeping the communication open, for sure. And a big thank you to the girls softball team for coming back tonight and, you know, keeping us informed. And I look forward to hear how the tour went of the field. And hopefully some of them will be 18 in April.
Greg?
Just wanted to wish our colleague Ann Fortier a speedy recovery and return to her important work on the school committee.
You're here. Chris?
Just congratulations to our a cappella groups that during that performance last Saturday night. It was really an outstanding night to attend.
Very good. I echo what everyone said tonight. Thank you. And thank you also, members, for being so patient with the shuffling that Doug and I tried to do, with some appreciation for needing to get a meeting in this week, while knowing that the snow was just going to very likely wreak some havoc on Tuesday night. So I appreciate everyone's the opportunity to get together so quickly and to be able to indulge me in having a full meeting agenda, so we could the business that we needed to get done was done. Thank you all.
Can I just add?
Oh, please, Mr. Lyons.
We want to wish families have a great break. Please be safe. Of course, if anyone needs anything before break or when you return, just please let us know. Thank you so much.
Great, excellent point. Okay.
When's break?
That's great. We have a motion to adjourn. Mr. Callahan.
Will the school committee adjourn its meeting of February 13, 2019?
Second.
We have a second? All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you and good evening.